there's been many times, I remember as a kid, there's many times where I would get in trouble from one of my parents, and listen, my parents, they believed in the ministry of laying on hands. Not where it's like, healings are manifested. Jesus, like where, like if it was in today's world, like DCF would manifest. Like they just show up and say, yeah, hey, what's going on? But there was times where I remember I would get in trouble. I mean, not like I did anything wrong. I mean, obviously, my sisters probably made something up because like I did anything wrong. But my parents would start getting on to me. And there was a few moments I remember where they were getting on to me, and then one of my grandmothers would come and show up, and then they would turn the tables, they would walk in the room, and then they would start being like, well, Vernon, you remember when you did this? Well, Dewetta, you were just like that when you did that. And I was like, yeah, get him, Grandma. Get him on, Pat. Get him on, Reeby. Come on. But something happened in my favor when my grandfathers maybe a little different there, but when my grandmothers, because obviously I was the favorite of my grandmothers, but when they walk, the atmosphere changed. and it to the point where it benefited me. I thought I was going to get a spanking. Now they're getting in trouble. But when Jesus walks into the room, the atmosphere changes, and it is always for our benefit. It is always for our benefit. And I was, just during my personal devotion time, I started pulling out these things. Like it was just like God was just highlighting all these times where Jesus walked in to a room or walked in to a building. And there's many of them. I could probably do a whole series on all the rooms Jesus walked into. I mean, he walked into synagogues, temples, homes, tax booths, onto boats, all kind of places. But I want to share with you guys 3 portraits, 3 scenes that I feel like God has just highlighted to me so we understand what happens when Jesus walks into the room. We're going to start, and as everybody looks, as our worship pastor walks into the room, you would think that she would just be in here, just sitting here the whole time, just loving Jesus. If you turn to Luke chapter 4, verse 14 and 15, if you don't have a Bible, you can look up here on the Sky Bible. Now I'm going to just kind of like set this up a little bit for you guys. So at this moment, we were at what happened right before this. Jesus has just spent 40 days fasting. And Satan has been tempting Jesus, throwing all this stuff at him. So he had just got done with that iconic scene. Jesus had just got done. Now we find ourselves in this, Luke chapter 4, 14 and 15. And it says, then Jesus returned in the power of the Spirit to Galilee. And news from him went out through all the surrounding regions. And he taught in their synagogues, being glorified by all. In other words, he would get there, he would teach, and they'd be like, dude, this guy is good. They'd be like calling their cousins and their friends and their man, you got to come next time. This Jesus guy's speaking. Dude, you do not want to miss it. So places were getting packed out. He was a popular guy in these synagogues. All right? Now, I want to show, I got this map. I don't do this very often, but on Wednesday night, Bob and I somehow, some way, started talking about maps in the back of the Bible. I never look at the maps in the back of the Bible, okay? I just don't, sometimes I'm like, wow, who's maps? Like, come on. It's like, now we got GPS. Remember back when you had to read maps? Like, how many of you guys know how to read maps? Yeah, like all old people. Yeah, I see that. So, there's a map. So, this entire region is Galilee, all right? Now, there's little towns inside Galilee. Right here's Nazareth, okay? That's where Jesus is from. So, but he is going to these synagogues in this whole region right here, He's going around preaching in these synagogues, teaching in these synagogues, okay? So let's go to verse 16. We'll throw that back up here in a minute. All right. So he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, as his custom was. This is his hometown, right? And he went to the synagogue on the Sabbath day, and he stood up to read. So Jesus goes in. He stands up. He's like, okay, it's my turn to read. The guy that's in charge of the service, the guy that's just kind of keeping the order of service, making sure everything flows, Jesus gets up. He hands him a book for Jesus to read out of. Jesus gets up. He opens up the book, and it is the book from the prophet Isaiah. So it's some prophecies. He starts reading this book. He gets done reading it. He closes it. He hands it back to the guy running the service. Jesus walks over and he sits down. Now, when he does that, everybody else in the synagogue's like, whoa. Man, I never heard somebody speak with that kind of authority. Man, my cousin Jethro was right. This guy's good. You know, he's like, wow, man. But he looks so familiar. Where do I know that guy from? And it says when Jesus sat down, obviously, I don't know what the order of the service was at that time, but somebody else was probably getting up there to read, and everybody's looking at Jesus, and he's like, hey, I'm right here, guys. Yeah. But everybody's looking at Jesus. Now, I don't care who you are, you get done, and you sit down somewhere, all eyes are on you. It's a little awkward. And you're either going to be like, you're just going to get up and leave, you know? Or you may, look at Barry and say, hey, Barry, why don't you take a picture? It lasts longer. And then Barry said, I've been taking pictures. And I'd say, that's weird. Please leave. But everybody's staring at Jesus. So it gets to the point where Jesus, he needs to say something. He just read the prophecies. Everybody's looking at him. And this is what he says, verse 21. It says, and he began to say to them, today the scripture is fulfilled in your hearing. In your hearing. In other words, you just heard this prophecy is fulfilled. What he was saying is like, hey guys, guess what? Surprise! I'm him. That guy I was reading about. Right here. Now, obviously, he wasn't like that boastful about it, but he was like, I'm him. Now, people are still like, wow, man, what in the world? And then somebody's like, hold up. I know who that guy is. He grew up here. That's Joseph's boy, the carpenter. You remember him? That's Joseph's boy? That's that little boy Jesus running around? You remember when he was making us birdhouses? Yeah, I still got that birdhouse. That's a good birdhouse, you know. Cardinals from everywhere come to it. Yeah. And I started thinking, who is this guy to tell us this stuff? And the birdhouse guy is saying that he's the prophecy being fulfilled. So they approach Jesus. Jesus gives them some truth, and they get mad. All right? They get upset. Luke 4:28. Let's go to verse 28. So all those in the synagogue, when they heard these things, were filled with wrath and rose up and thrust him out. Now, I don't know. I'm not a big thruster, but I'm thinking thrusting is probably something like, they're like, it's like this, you know, like pushing Jesus out of the synagogue with their chest. I think that's thrusting. I really don't know, not a big thruster. But anyways, they are forcing him out, all right? Thrust him out of the city, all the way out of the city, and they led him to the brow of the hill on which their city was built, that they might throw him down over the cliff. That's pretty mad, okay? He's in his hometown. He's like, hey, man, I went to school with you. Like, I don't care, we're about to throw you off the cliff. Like, they got so mad, they got so upset, they obviously put their hands on Jesus, and they're about to throw him off the cliff. I love this next part, though. The next part, verse says, then passing through the midst of them, he went away. So they're about to throw him off. Like, you're going to push them off, yeah, throw them off. And Jesus just walked away. They're probably like, yeah, did you already throw him? No, he's over there. How'd he get over there? You let him go? I don't know. Jesus was like, see you guys. See ya. He just walked away. Verse 31. Then he went down to Capernaum, a city of Galilee, and was teaching them on the Sabbath. So he was like, well, forget this is Nazareth. I'm going to Capernaum. Now, can we throw that map back up there? All right, I thought this would get bigger on this, but here's Nazareth. He was right here. They pushed him out of the city, and now he's up here in Capernaum, still in Galilee, but he's in Capernaum. And he walks into a synagogue in Capernaum, and he starts teaching in this synagogue. Now, we find that in Luke chapter 4, verse 33. It says, now in the synagogue there was a man who had a spirit of an unclean demon. And he cried out with a loud voice, saying, let us alone. What have we to do with you, Jesus of Nazareth? Did you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God. Now, this is what it does not say. It does not say Jesus walked in and over sitting by himself, chewing on his skin and foaming from the mouth and scaring all the little kids was this one guy who had an unclean spirit. It didn't say that, okay? This is a normal dude, okay? I mean, he was fine. I'll argue he was a member of this synagogue, a member of this church. He's an active member. He probably gave money in the offering. He may have volunteered to help with the kids. Thank God we didn't let him. Good thing we had the background checks. He was just a normal guy and acting normal. He was probably singing hymns. He was probably amening them. But when Jesus walked in the room, something changed. And I'm sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, Jimmy, how many times have you just got up on stage, came to church, and you just, well, pretty much just entertained demons? And I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't know. If I have, I don't want to. And you're thinking right now, you're like, wait a minute. So Jesus walks in the room, and then this unclean spirit manifests. No, it's the spirit that yells this stuff at him, not the man. All right? And you're like, wait a minute, Jimmy. I thought, I was under the assumption, like when Jesus walks in the room, when you're in his presence, like it's like happy tears, you know? Oh, I love you, Jesus. Or it's like laughter, you know, like happy, like holy laughter, you know? I thought when Jesus is in the room, it's like dancing, like singing, like flags are getting waved and stuff. And that does happen. That does happen sometimes. But I want to just throw this out there so that you guys can understand. Sometimes when Jesus walks in the room, people get angry. Sometimes when Jesus walks in the room, like people want to throw other people off the cliff. Yeah? You ever walk in church and you go, oh, there he is. I'd like to throw him off the cliff. Brocky, don't look at Linda. Kidding. He'd have the whole church after him. And it would be more like Linda throwing Rocky off the cliff. We all know that. Sometimes people get angry. Why? Because when Jesus walks into the room, he brings all the attitude of heaven with him. All the attitude of heaven with him. So what happens when he does that? He starts pushing everything out that does not supposed to be there. If it's not supposed to be there, it's going to come to the surface. All right? So what's hidden starts to manifest. Pastor Mark talked about it not too long ago. You know, when you're in the presence of God, all the good about you rises to the surface, but also all the bad rises to the surface. Both, that's love on Jesus' part, both, because he's trying to set you free. But here's the thing. Here's the thing, though. Jesus walks in. He didn't look in there and go, well, let me see. Who looks demonic today? Let me see. Oh, you kind of, you're wearing a Yankee shirt. Maybe. No, he didn't do that. He walks in, and this man the Spirit starts to disrupt the service. Look at this. It's just like this. When the sun comes up in the morning, the sun don't come up and go, I rebuke you, darkness, in the name of Jesus. I just push you out. That don't happen. The essence of the sun, what the sun is, when it comes up, darkness has to leave. And it's the same way with Jesus. John 8:12. Throw that up there. It says, then Jesus spoke to them again, saying, I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life. What is darkness? It's the absence of light. So when Jesus walks in the room, this is number one point, darkness has to flee. Darkness has to flee. Check it out, the guy gets up, and he's like, what do you want from us, Jesus of Nazareth? I know who you are. And Jesus is just like, you can leave now. Not of the guy. It don't say anything about, and they picked the guy up and threw him out of the synagogue. That didn't happen. The guy didn't leave. He got delivered. And if we start looking at places where Jesus delivered people and then we followed their life, he delivered them, and then people were like, I will follow you anywhere. You tell me. They would go and change cities and towns. So I believe this guy, he got delivered, and he was like, oh, man, I love you, Jesus. He didn't get kicked out. He got delivered. So, you ever had this happen? And one time we don't understand this, and so you're in church. Presence of God is here. At least everybody says it is, and you're like, you don't feel it, but everywhere, like people are worshiping, their hands are raised, flags are being waved, and people are real like, it's like, man, what in the world, man? I don't feel anything. And then, as people are worshiping, it's like they got joy and happiness, like you just start getting angry. You ever had that happen? You just start getting mad. Like, they're worshiping Jesus, and I'm thinking about what Billy Bob did to me last week and how mad I am if I see him, if he walks in here. Everybody else is worshiping, and I'm thinking about how wrong I was done 3 years ago. Everybody's worshiping, and all of a sudden, like, depression hits me, and we're taught a lot of times is when that happens, there's something wrong with us. You ever know, like, the closer you get to God, you ever notice this happen? It happens a lot. I do as a pastor. As people get close to God, it's like, wow, man, they are like on fire for Jesus. And then all of a sudden, they just like get up, leave the church, and they just like back doing what they did before. And you're like, what happened? And they're out there thinking, something's wrong with me. You know what happened? That what was inside of them that they didn't even realize was inside of them started to manifest because God wanted to get it out, and instead they didn't understand that because no one's taught that to them, so they think something's wrong with us, and then they're like, I'm out of here. And there's people all over the world that has left churches because they think, well, I just can't do this. Because sometimes it is manifested in joy and happiness and laughter and crying and all that. But sometimes it's manifested in anger. Why? It's out of love. Not because he wants you to be mad. He wants to get that out of you. He wants you to be set free. He wants you to be delivered. But so many times we don't understand that. We think we got to cover it up. We can't tell anybody about that. We got to medicate that. Man, I need to go to the doctor, and they need to raise my Xanax. They need to Man, something is wrong with me. I need some happy pills. And because we don't understand. He's trying to get that out of us. He's bringing it to the surface. Why? Because he loves us. That critical spirit, that depression, that anxiety, he's trying to get that out of you. So right when that starts to happen, and that starts to come to the surface, what we need to do, that needs to be a red flag that we need to look around and start looking for Jesus. Because a lot of times the manifestation takes place, and we start looking at ourselves instead of looking for Jesus, and we miss the visitation. The next scene I would like for you to look at, we find in Mark chapter 5, verse 22. Is that this dude, his name is Jairus. Jesus walks into his house. 5:22, it says, and behold, one of the rulers of the synagogue came. Now, I just want to just point this out here real quick. It's one of the rulers of the synagogue, okay, and he's in Galilee. You think it's possible that, maybe he was there when that demonic man, called out? I know in my mind, I got a big imagination. I even started thinking, man, how about if it was Jairus? You're like, well, no, he's one of the synagogue leaders. He's like a pastor. He's one of the leaders. Look, there's a lot of pastors and a lot of leaders that need deliverance. It's not saying anything. There's a lot of us that need deliverance. It's when it happens, it changes everything because that's what Jesus does. Now, it probably wasn't Jairus, but I have a feeling maybe one of his boys would call him up and said, hey! And obviously, this was way back then. He didn't have an iPhone 12. Maybe it was like an iPhone 2 or something. He called him up and said, hey, Jairus, dude, you won't believe what happened here. So Jairus comes up, finish reading this, I guess. Jairus by name, and behold, one of the rulers of the synagogues came, Jairus by name, and when he saw him, he fell at his feet and begged him earnestly, saying, my little daughter lies at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her, that she'll be healed, and she'll live. I want to point out Jairus, he's one of the Pharisees. They weren't too fond of Jesus. He's a synagogue leader. His 12-year-old daughter's about to die. He comes to Jesus and he says, hey, man, will you come and lay your hands on my daughter? And Jesus says, yeah, let's go. They start walking to his house. He takes 3 of his disciples. He takes Peter, James, and John. They start walking to the house. Somebody on the way touches Jesus. They didn't even stop Jesus. This lady, I don't have enough time to go into this story, but this lady touches Jesus. Jesus stops. The lady's already been healed. He don't have to stop. Jesus stops, looking around for her, wanting to talk to her. And then they start chit-chatting. What's Jairus thinking about right now? He's probably, dude, my daughter is dying. Well, come on. You want to stop and talk to this lady? You want, how do we react? Because we do that a lot of times, right? What happens, how do we react when the thing we've been praying for, we're like, I know God's hearing me, I know God's hearing me, and then it don't happen the way we think it should happen? How do we react to that? How about when the thing you've been praying for, the person over here gets it? And you're like, Jesus, you missed me by a few feet. Like you go over there, hey, you know that thing you got? Yeah, that wasn't for you. That was supposed to be for me, so give me that healing. He's asking for healing for his daughter. And this lady gets the healing that he's been asking for. And to make things worse, at that moment, one of his buddies, one of his boys pushes through the crowd and says, hey, don't even worry about it. Don't waste his time. She's dead. How did that feel? What went through his head at that moment? I tell you what, a lot of us would have done. Like, I knew you couldn't help me, Jesus. I knew you didn't love me, Jesus. You care more about her than you care about me. Yeah. Jesus said, don't worry, just believe. And he started going to his house again. I think that says a lot about Jairus because he could have just been like, it's hopeless. But they continue to go there. They get to the home. When they get there, they hear this commotion going on. They hear crying and weeping and mourning. They walk in, and Jesus is like, why y'all crying? And they said, what? The girl's dead. They're probably, no doubt, they're Jairus' friends. It's not like they don't care about Jairus. They obviously do. They could be out like at Golden Corral or Red Lobster or something, but they're there praying. They're there with Jairus and his family. They care about him. There are probably other leaders within the synagogue, other Pharisees, okay? They walk in, they're crying, they're mourning, and then we see a manifestation take place because Jesus said, no, she's just sleeping. Now, I don't care. You could tell all the jokes in the world. If it was one of my kids and they had passed away, you ain't getting me to laugh. But at that moment when he said that, all of them that were crying and mourning, they start laughing and mocking him and ridiculing him. And I love how the Passion Translation puts this in Mark chapter 5:40, what Jesus does. It says, then everyone began to ridicule and make fun of him, but he threw them all outside. I could just see Jesus going, no, you got to leave, buddy. No, you can't stay here. Now, at this moment, Jairus had to make a decision, okay? At this moment, that's his friends. That's people that's been with him. That's people that stuck with him. They're at his house because they care about him. Now, here's this Jesus guy that the Pharisees don't even really like. He's kind of unsure about him. And he has to pick. Do I pick my friends or do I pick Jesus? And a lot of us, we've been picking our friends a lot more than we pick Jesus. You got some, take them out. Get them out. Then Jesus takes our boy Jar Jar. He says, hey, Jar Jar, get your wife. Let's go in here. Peter, James, and John, let's go. They go into the room where the little girl is, and Jesus goes up and he prays for her. And he says a simple prayer. He says, little girl, get up. Something like I say that to Kinsley all the time, but I say it about 50 times because that girl can sleep. And it's more like, you better get up, little girl. You got to go to school. Kind of like that. I have a feeling Jesus' tone was a little different. Look what happens. She wasn't only healed, okay? She wasn't only healed. We got the scripture, Mark 5:42. Immediately the girl rose and walked. She didn't just get up and go, oh, man, I had the craziest dream. Oh, man, what are y'all doing here? She got up. She started walking around, probably opened the door. Hey, Uncle Stephen, what are you doing outside? They kicked me out. Oh, okay. She started. It wasn't even like she was ever dead. Second point is when Jesus walks in the room, what is dead comes back to life. And it's like it was never dead. And there's for some of you that are here this morning or this afternoon, and there has been something within you that you thought was dead. You thought was never going to be alive again. You thought it was over. That's never going to happen. I'm never going to be able to fulfill my purpose. My marriage is over. It's dead. I'll never have that relationship with my son or my daughter. And you have just said it is dead. And I'm telling you, when Jesus walks in the room, what is dead becomes back alive. And it don't even just come back alive. It comes back alive like it was never dead. You want proof of it? Right here. I ran for God for 8 years. I never thought this would happen again. Never in my wildest dreams. And now that it's like those 8 years never even happened. My God, you guys got me so worked up and dropping water bottle tops and everything. The third scene that I want you to look at is it happens 2 weeks before Jesus goes to the cross. There's a festival going on, Passover festival, and people from all over would gather together in Jerusalem for this. And it was a big deal. All different races and different walks of life were there. It'd pretty much be like if we all just went to Disney World right now. There's just so many people there, you know. Be like walking into that. It's found in Matthew 21, read verse 12 and 13. It says, then Jesus went into the temple of God and drove out all those who bought and sold in the temple and overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold doves. 13. And he said to them, "It is written, my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of thieves." Jesus walks in. He starts throwing tables, overturning tables, money going everywhere. He's kicking bird cages, you know. Relax, baby. The birds are fine. They're getting sacrificed anyways, you know. Because and a lot of times this scripture, like, it's thrown around so much, this story, and a lot of times we don't even understand it. And it's surely a different portrait of Jesus from Matthew 19. You remember then? Like in Matthew 19, parents are starting to try to bring their kids to Jesus. The disciples are like, "Nope, not going to happen. You need to go." And Jesus is like, "Whoa, bring those kids to me." And now in Matthew 19, Jesus is holding babies. And then we get to Matthew 21, and he's like overturning tables and throwing money and kicking bird cages. When the Apostle John wrote about this, he said he made a whip and started using that to drive them out. Whew. Sweet baby Jesus. What is going on? And so many times we use this passage to justify us getting mad and getting angry. Why are you getting on to me? Jesus got angry. Jesus got mad. He threw people out of the temple. Yeah, but Jesus didn't like curse at me and like call me all kind of names and then went and talked bad about me. Like, he didn't do that. But we throw that out there and just as like try to justify our actions and our anger and our childish behaviors because, well, Jesus got angry. And we don't even understand what's going on. At that time, at that moment, the temple, the synagogue, it was in chaos. Worship was being manipulated, okay? Jesus didn't get mad and go in there and start turning over tables because they were selling merch, okay? That's merchandise. He wasn't like, "Man, you shouldn't be selling hats in here." I don't think Jesus would have cared about selling hats. That's not what was happening. They were selling forgiveness. And they were selling forgiveness for Disney prices. Like, they had upped it. Like, this festival was going on, and they upped the price of everything. You know, it was normally $100. Now it's $300. You come in, you buy a dove, because at that time, the only way to right your wrong was by sacrificing. And at that time, there were only certain coins and money that you could use. So if you came in and you didn't have that money, you had to exchange it, and they were charging fees to exchange it as well. You imagine that, though? You had to buy your forgiveness. I did wrong. Well, you got to buy that. Well, how much? Well, I don't know. And they would sell doves, and if you couldn't afford doves, you could buy some pigeons. Well, I can't afford that one dove for $100, but I'll take 50 pigeons for $1. That's what was going on. It sounds ridiculous, right? And if you did not have any money, if you were poor, you couldn't even get forgiveness. Like, what am I going to do? If you had a little bit of money, you know what they did? They had a form. You just fill out this form right here, and you can get a credit application. You just pay $25 a week for the next 572 weeks, and you'll be good. 33% interest. You're good. Yeah. That was happening for real. And Jesus comes in, and he goes, "That's not going to happen on my watch." And he walks in, and he starts overturning tables, and he starts throwing money, kicking bird cages, and doing all this. And you know what happens? This is the third point. When Jesus walks in the room, he changes everything. 21:14-16. Check this out. Then this was after he threw these people out. Then the blind and the lame came to him in the temple, and he healed them. But when the chief priests and scribes saw the wonderful things that he did, and the children crying out in the temple and saying, "Hosanna to the Son of David," they were indignant. I said this word wrong the first time. Indignant. Yeah, that word. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And he said to him, Do you, what? Is this the same word? Okay. He said to them, "Do you hear what these are saying?" And Jesus said to them, "Yes. Have you never read out of the mouth of babes and nursing infants, you are perfected praise?" Where are my glasses? I've been preaching this whole time without my glasses. It's a miracle I was able to read that. How long do you think it took? How long you think it took? How long you think it took for Jesus to empty the temple? It says as soon as he got to Jerusalem, he'd start doing. Let's do 30 minutes. For the sake of, for argument's sake, because I know Denise will try to argue with me about it and try to come up with it. We'll give you the benefit of the doubt, Denise, and we'll say an hour. Jesus walks into that room, and within an hour, it goes from worship that is manipulated, worship that has been perverted, to now the blind, the sick are coming into the temple. He was making room for those people before they could even get in. And this is what's so cool about it. It says that the children started praising. The children are running around, praising, hollering, screaming, yeah, Jesus, Son of David, woo. And listen, when kids start praising Jesus, one thing you can say, it's authentic. It's as authentic as it gets. So it went from worship that was manipulated, perverted, to authentic worship when Jesus walked in the room in less than an hour, for argument's sake. For argument's sake. Jesus changes everything. Now here's the thing. All right. Jesus knew when he walked out of there, they're going to pick the tables back up. All right. They're going to put the little birds back in the cages. They're going to gather all their money. And they're going to do it again. All right. But what happened at that moment was a symbol of what was going to take place in 2 weeks as Jesus goes to the cross and he changes the entire system. And no longer do you have to bring a sacrifice to right your wrong, because he was the sacrifice and all you have to do is accept him, and it does not cost you anything. Listen, you can't get to heaven with those offering plates, and you can't get to heaven because you pulled up enough weeds at the church. You do it because of what he did and his sacrifice. He replaced the system. There's so many other stories I could say when Jesus walked in the room. There's when he walked into Peter's house and he healed his mother-in-law. When he walked after resurrection, when he walked into the room where the disciples were hiding and he walked through a locked door and eliminated fear. I could talk about when he went on a 7-mile walk with this dude named Cleopas, and he walked into his house, and his eyes were open. I could talk about a time where Jesus just walked into a funeral home. You know that's going to be good. Jesus walks into a funeral home. His widow's boy was dead, and he walks up to the coffin and says, "Get up." And he was raised from that. I could talk about all that stuff. But or I could just say this. When Jesus walks in the room, everything changes. You know what happens a lot of times is we're in 2021. It's been a lot of years since Jesus went to the temple and cleared the temple, but all over the world, and I'm not saying here at Fairlawn, I'm saying all over the world there are churches that spirit that Jesus chased out, that spirit that Jesus got in. There's so many churches that go and they say, "Oh, come here," and they bring that spirit right back into the church. Now, it looks different. It looks more like traditions, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with traditions. I'm saying there's something wrong when we put traditions over Jesus. You know what it looks like? It looks like politics. It looks like talking about politics and allowing that to divide us. I'm not saying anything's wrong with politics, but I'm saying it is if we put that over Jesus. Listen, guys, I get worked up about this, but we got loved ones, we got mamas and daddies and brothers and sisters and sons and daughters that are living a life where they are going to hell, or they're living in so much bondage that they are living hell here on earth And we would, instead of them being delivered and telling them about Jesus, instead we want to argue about a COVID vaccine. So some of us, we're more passionate about whether you should or should not get a COVID vaccine than we are wanting to tell people about Jesus. And then we call ourselves the church. How about this argument? You know, when everything went downhill, when everything went to pot, when everything was just started messing up. You know when it was? It was, brother, it was when they took God out of schools. That's when it was. That's when everything just went south. They took God out of schools. I beg to differ with you, my friend. When things started going downhill was not when they took God out of schools. It's when we took God out of our churches, and when we took God out of our homes, and when we took God out of our families. Take God out of schools. Listen, as long as we got children of God, that little kids, teachers walking into that, they got Jesus, they'll never take God out of schools. I ain't worried about that. What I'm worried about is all the times we've taken God out of our churches, when we've taken God out of our homes. And a lot of us, we got Jesus with us, but we get home and we're like, all right, Jesus, you just stay right here. I'm going to need you tomorrow at work. You know, that place is messed up. That place is whacked. But you just stay right here. And we walk through the door, and we're yelling at our kids. We're yelling at our spouses. And then we would rather allow 30-day fiance into our homes than Jesus, you know. We're all about some Survivor, you know. But Jesus, we just want to keep out there. And then we're wondering, why is things so messed up? Why is my marriage so messed up? Why is my family so messed up? Why is this going? And we're not even allowing Jesus to walk in. Oh, you know what we need? We need to get back. We need to get back to that old time religion. You know, then no, we're in the situation we are because we brought that old time religion back into the church. Now I'm talking about the old time religion from the Pharisees, you know. And then we're wondering why are things happening the way they are? Is Jesus over traditions? Is Jesus over politics? Is Jesus over everything? And I was done with this message. I was done. I was over. I was done, close the book. And then it's when Jesus started messing with me and started wrecking me on this. And I know I'm over on my time, but I need to share this with you. So I was thinking, I was like, man, Jesus, I was all fired up like I am right now. I was like, man, Jesus, if they want a pastor, they want a preacher that's going to just dance around things, it's not going to be me. And you know, that's hard because, as you guys know, like I'm a good dancer, you know. Like, you know, I can dance. So Jesus started dealing with me. He's like, all right, Jimmy, you know that little saying you like to say all the time? You've been saying it for like the last 3 or 4 years. And I was like, oh, yeah, I know that one. And you'll know it because I say it almost every Sunday, is that when Jesus went to the cross, and then when we accept Jesus, what happens is it's the ultimate life swap. He trades places with me. All right? Now, when the Father looks at me, he sees Jesus. So, therefore, he's never angry at me. He's always smiling at me if I'm in Christ. That's true. But there's another side of it that I never thought about. So Jesus wrecked me last night. Because I'm thinking about this, and then he says, okay, Jimmy, that's what you believe. Yeah! I mean, you guys can put it on my tombstone, you know? Jesus traded places with him. I'll be fine with that. So he said, all right, so Jimmy, you believe that? Like, we swap places, right? Yeah, Jesus, yeah. You want me to tell them that? You want me to do a whole message around that? It's going to be good. I don't even need notes, you know? No, I think they got it. And he says, so if you switch places with me, then what happens when you walk into the room? I kid you not. I went into the bathroom because I didn't want anybody to see me, and I cried like a baby for an hour. Because you got to remember, I had this whole thing written. I had it all down, all points and everything. Jimmy, when you walk in the room, does darkness leave? Sometimes, it depends, sometimes, it depends on Julie and I got an argument, It depends on if the kids made me mad. Depends on if I had a bad day at work. I said, all right, Jimmy, I hear you. When you walk in the room, do you speak life into people or do you speak death into people? Well, it depends. They make me mad, I mean, like when I walk in here at church, on Fairlawn property, yeah, I can do that, but how about when you walk into other places, Jimmy? How about when you walk into that fire station? Jimmy, okay, when you walk in the room, does anything change? Or does everything stay the same? And somebody's right now, you're thinking, because anytime I talk about this, I have pushback, because you're like, oh, he's trying to say that I'm Jesus. He's trying to say that he's Jesus. I'm saying is, you are a representation, and you are, for some people, you may be the only Jesus they ever come in contact with. And if you're too upset about how mad somebody made you, or if you and your spouse got in a fight, or if your kids did what they're supposed to do, then you may miss it.